Caster back again with another game of the week preview. We're previewing game 2 of this Knicks and Miami Heat matchup. And with me today to break this game down is none other than Brady. Hawkey is the lead Miami Heat writer for 5 Reasons Sports. But before we ask Brady how he's doing today, make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys and make sure to check out KnicksFanTV.com. Brady, how you doing today, man? How you feeling?
I'm doing good. How you been?
Could be better, man. You know, I want to see the Knicks win and, take game 1. You know, Miami was able to steal game 1 from the Knicks. Knicks did a terrible job shooting the 3, but hey, it's a long series, man. I expect this one to go 6. I've been calling the Knicks to win this one in 6, but we're not here to talk about my series prediction. We're here to talk about what we saw from game 1, preview game 2. So let's get into this. Brady, what did you see from game 1 that Miami did? Because the Knicks came out strong. They were in control throughout most of the first half, going by the end of half, Knicks were up 5, come out into the second half. Miami was able to go on a run. What did you see from game 1 that Miami did in order to take that lead and win the game?
Yeah, it was a weird scenario because even when you mentioned them being up 5, it felt like in Miami's kind of perspective, it was like, we're only down 5. Like, they didn't feel like they played a great half. It felt like New York was clicking early in that game. And then obviously they kind of went on a run in the second half, as you mentioned. But defensively, I was interested in some of the matchups because they obviously deployed Jimmy on Brunson. He was still able to get into his spots. Something they've done since forever I can remember is they put Gabe, Vincent on RJ Barrett. And something Spo always seems to do is he's like, RJ beat us kind of thing. And he was doing that early in the game. Like, he was beating them and he was kind of doing his thing. They deployed different matchups. But I think if there was one takeaway we both could have, it's that Miami forced them kind of to shoot the 3 ball and they just didn't hit it effectively. Like, the shots didn't drop. What did it end up? 7 of 34. Like, that's just not going to cut it if you're New York, because those are kind of the shots that they were happening. And we talk about all the time about building a wall and this phrase that Miami gets crowned with defensively. But they did it in a different way, I guess, against Brunson. He was still able to get to his spots, though. Like, it was like, it's funny because if we're comparing, because it's always New York and Miami, it's always clashing. Like, it's always these comparable things. But if there was one comparable element, I don't think that the ways that Jimmy and Brunson get to their spots is so similar to me. Like, just the way that once they get to their spot in the floor, they're going to find a way to get it up and probably hit it most of the time. So that was kind of the one thing. But Miami offensively, I thought they did some good things in terms of they're hitting their shots. Jimmy was kind of getting 3 defenders sent to him, as we all expected. After that Milwaukee series, that I still to this moment don't understand why he didn't see a double. I think it was 8 total doubles he saw in the Milwaukee series. We knew that was not going to happen when it was New York. They were sending 3 guys at him sometimes. It's like, if I'm the defensive team, I am making Miami everybody else's shooters beat me. And it kind of worked out. Some extra swings. Gabe got going early in the game. Max hit some 3s. So it was just 3s tell the story, it feels like. That was kind of the story for me, at least, to kind of detail game 1. But it was an interesting dynamic because I thought there was some adjustments back and forth, like I mentioned. But game 2 feels like, and I know we'll get into this, but a total different game, especially with the injury report that we're seeing.
Absolutely. But before we get into game 2, for what I saw, it was more that, you talked about it. Miami dared the New York Knicks to shoot the 3, and they just continue to struggle. This entire playoff run for the Knicks, they haven't been shooting the 3 ball well. Just to give you some numbers, game 1 against Cleveland, they shot 20.6% from 3. Game 2 against Cleveland, they shot 31%. Game 3, they shot 27.6%. Game 4, they shot 30.3%. Game 5, they shot 24.1%. And against Miami, they shot 21.6%. It has been a struggle just for them to get up to league average. And I think that was what was on Spo's, on his scouting reports. Like, if we're going to allow, because in the beginning, it was just interesting. They allowed Brunson, RJ just to do whatever they want. And then it was like, all right, let's see if these guys can actually shoot the 3. And that was really it at the end of the day. To me, I thought it was more so the Knicks just struggling from 3. That game was so close. It wasn't that either team was really landing a blow that was so crazy. I mean, New York was just on a crazy run in the first half. I knew Miami was going to get back into some sort of rhythm. I thought it was going to be closer than that once the second half came around. But to me, these are two like evenly matched teams the way they're going about it. More so on the defensive end, offensively. I think from what we saw, I was not expecting Kyle Lowry to have the performance that he did for 18 points, shot 5 of 12 from the field, but went 3 for 6 from downtown. That was a good performance by him, especially with the 6 assists. And then you also had Gabe Vincent putting up 20 points. Those are kind of, guys that if I'm Tibbs, I'm like, all right, I'll allow those guys to beat us if that's how we're going to lose. And that's what happened. Have you been seeing that type of performance? Like I've been in and out for what Miami did against Milwaukee, but how's Lowry? How's Gabe Vincent been performing for them so far?
So it's weird because there's this thing where Gabe is just he's gonna get shots up. Like that is pretty clear. There's been this trend specifically in the playoffs, and it's kind of the Tyler Hero trend where he's picking up a lot of the shots that he kind of his shot diet. So he gets shots up early in the game, and kind of we saw an uptick for him, I guess, in percentages wise, because he's kind of been up and down throughout the season. And then Kyle's clicking at the right time. It seems like he's moving a lot better. He seems a little like that fourth quarter. We've talked a lot about Kyle on different ends of the scale this season, but that fourth quarter just felt like he just had it going. And you mentioned like how kind of what's been the trend, I guess, in the postseason. He had that big game in the first play-in game. Like they played Atlanta in that first play-in game. They lose, but man, was Kyle insanely good in that game. Like he had an all-time performance in that game for Miami, and they still don't end up winning. So we've seen their pull-up shooting is kind of just hitting, which is important. But you mentioned the Knicks 3-point numbers, and I was looking at it today, and I put it out there. Here's just some of the Heat's 3-point shooting numbers, which make absolutely zero sense. Like this is the worst 3-point shooting team in the regular season.
Yeah.
And then you turn it around, and this is the playoff numbers. It's Duncan is 58% from 3, Jimmy 43, Kevin Love 43, Gabe 42, Max 41, Kyle 40, Caleb 38. When that happens, it's just hard to overlook that. Like that is the game. Like that is their run right now. Like they are just absolutely peaking at the right time from deep. So I don't know if trends even matter, to be honest, for guys like Vincent or Lowry, because just right now they're hitting, and I guess they're just confident in those pull-ups. And like I said, the Tyler element, the one element that when he went out, I was like, I don't know how they replicate his pull-up shooting. Like that was what opened up. It felt like so much of their offense was just when he got to the elbow, when he got to the high pick and roll and got to his pull-ups from deep. And I was like, who's going to replicate that enough? And it's just been a little bit from everybody. It's been a little bit from Gabe, a little bit from Kyle, a little bit down the line. So I feel like that's been important. The question is if they can keep it going forward.
Yeah, definitely. That's the question that I have, right? Is that because when the Knicks have faced the Heat throughout the entire regular season, it's been different cast of characters that kind of show up every single time, right? I mean, you're going to have your mainstays with like Randall and Brunson for the Knicks, and it's going to be Jimmy, and when Hero was healthy, it's going to be those two guys. But it's like, who's going to be that next factor that comes in here and really swings the tide for this game? And, I'll be interested to see who that is for the Knicks for this upcoming matchup, and who will be for Miami this time, because you let me know. Is this something that you could expect from Gabe Vincent? Like, I feel like 20 points and like Kyle Lowry, like this is like, they'll do it one game, go quiet the next one, and it's going to be somebody else. And then it's just, it's like three card Monty. You never know what you're going to get.
Mm-hmm. And the weird thing is, in terms of kind of comparing this game one, like the one advantage we were talking about forever is the advantage for New York in terms of the bench points and just the fact that their depth is there, the bench scoring is there, and Kyle Lowry off the bench outscores the entire Knicks bench. Like if you're New York, that can't happen. Like that can't happen defensively, and that can't happen offensively. Like you have to be able to kind of find that base with your bench scores, and some of it's different because you Randall out, you have some guys stepping into the starting lineup, so a little wacky, but you still can't have that happen. They have to dominate the bench points, it feels like, and they have to dominate transition, which has kind of been their base. It feels like getting those turnovers going out on the break. And when Kevin Love is throwing 3 outlet passes in a row in the third quarter, and kind of a team that is, by the way, we could talk about frequency of transition and just not being like going into transition a lot, which is Miami. But if there was I don't think there's an uglier fast break team to watch. If you were watching this game 1 through 90, this team has no idea how to run a fast break. Like they run into each other, the ball's fumbling, they take pull-up threes in transition because it's their only look. It's randomly clicking right now, which makes zero sense. Like they're averaging like the most points per possession in the playoffs in transition. So it's, once again, like basketball's a weird thing. Sometimes you peak at the right time, but yeah, those are two elements I feel like New York can't lose: the transition game and the bench points.
Yeah, don't get me angry. Don't get me angry, Brady. Don't get me angry. And once again, we are talking to Brady Hawk. He's the lead Miami Heat writer for 5 Reasons Sports. Also, Knicks Nation, just to let you know, and just as a reminder, for game 2, the watch party is at the 4040 Club, Jay-Z's 4040 Club to be exact. So if you can't make it to MSG tomorrow night, make sure to go to 4040, get your tickets at KFTVplayoffs.com. All right, Brady, keeping this thing moving along. Let's talk about game 2 now. Game 2 is tomorrow. You can catch game 2 on TNT. They will be playing at, what's the time that I got over here right now? They're starting at 7:30 on TNT. Home at Madison Square Garden for the New York Knicks. What do you expect? Well, actually, let me pull this back a little bit because there's some injury reports. Well, let me pull that back a little bit. First thing, you got Jimmy Butler, who's questionable tomorrow because of his ankle, where, the whole trip up with Josh Hart on Sunday. You have Jalen Brunson with a surprise injury report today saying that he's questionable because of a sore ankle. And then you have Julius Randle, who is questionable for tomorrow because of his sprained ankle. So let me ask you this. Do you expect Jimmy Butler to play tomorrow? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I would lean no. That's
Okay.
where I would lean personally. Like I see them approaching it, and it's such a risky game if this is the way they're approaching it. I think it's just that he won't be ready, so they'll rest him. But we saw with the Milwaukee series when Giannis got hurt, and they said they gave him that extra game off in game 3. Miami ends up winning, and that kind of turned the series around. Like if he came back a game earlier, maybe things look different. So you don't want to play that game if you're Miami here, where you like sit Jimmy because you feel like you stole your game. Like I think that's nonsense. But I don't expect him, I guess, to be ready. And I think their approach is like, we'll give him 5 or 6 days off until Saturday, because it's this weird schedule where you play Tuesday, you have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off. I don't even know what is happening with the schedule. But in terms of Jimmy, like there's all the logic that says he won't play. But if you know anything about Jimmy Butler, because everybody thinks that, he probably will play. So like there's such an unexpected element of this. And it's been like this, I think, for every team. Like I keep comparing it to the Milwaukee series, but like every game was like, oh, is Giannis going to play? Is Giannis going to play? And then all of a sudden we get the thing at the last second. It's like, it's been like that in the regular season as well. Or you see with Julius Randle, it's the same stuff all along. But yeah, there's two totally different game plans at hand between somewhat to this degree of Julius Randle playing or not playing. But when you have this team in Miami that is so reliant on Jimmy Butler, like everything is on the back of him, it is like two absolutely different ends of the room in terms of game plan.
Yeah, absolutely. If Jimmy Butler doesn't play, it's totally different. And for offensively, I would be very curious to see how the Miami Heat make up for that, because it's one thing not to have Hero and still have Butler, but then you're going to ask Bam to be that offensive catalyst, or you're going to ask really Kyle Lowry, Gabe Vincent, those guys once again to really step it up. It'd probably be like any other team that gets more to team basketball, trying to look for the best shot possible if that's to happen. But you still need another player to get things going, because what Jimmy Butler does, it's the same thing. You mentioned it for Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson's able to get to his spots. Jimmy's able to get to his spots. And when you have the entire defense collapsing on that one guy because of they're such a threat in isolation, it just opens it up for the offense. For the Knicks, Brunson being questionable is like, I'm interested to see what happens. I wonder if this is just to say, hey, like it's just out there. I would expect him to play, in all honesty. Yeah. I feel like it because it's sore. It came up last minute. You saw him play through it the entire time yesterday. Maybe it was sore during the game yesterday and that was affecting his shot from 3, but I expect him, if it's not that serious, like I didn't see him like limping or anything like that. This is the playoffs. I expect him to put on a brace, whatever, and to be out there. Julius Randle, because of his sprained ankle, which is the same left ankle that he sprained against Miami in the last matchup between Miami during the regular season, and it's the same ankle that he hurt against Cleveland. I expect him to come back. I expect him to be back for this game. I think when you watch what happened in game 1, the practice that he went through in warmups for game 1, he looks ready. I think New York is like, we need him back just because you need somebody who can draw that much attention like Brunson. I mean, between both of them, they're going to both draw double teams between Brunson and Randle. So for New York, you need both those guys out there. I expect both of them to play. And if Randle doesn't play, it's the same thing that we saw in game one. Obi's going to be out there. I would just hope that Tibbs says, hey, especially when he was our best 3-point shooter, you just leave him out there just to help space the floor. That's the only thing I would want to see differently if Randall can't go, but I do expect him to be there for game two.
And if there was one thing, I mean, everything that we know what Julius Randle provides, but if there was one thing to notice from game one, it's like they just need a second creator. Like they just need it badly. They just need somebody to free up Brunson in a way it's from possession to possession where they can't just wall him off. Like that seems like the major difference here. But it's funny because we keep talking about the 3-point shooting and we keep kind of noticing all this stuff. I think specifically if Jimmy doesn't play defensively, I think Miami's one of their adjustments is they're going to play so much zone. Like I think that's kind of what they're going to lean into, and they're going to say, well, New York just shot a little over 20% from three. We love our zone. The zone forces a bunch of 3-point looks. If they make them in a game we don't have Jimmy, then we'll live with it kind of thing. And I think you're just going to see them deploy a whole bunch of zone throughout the game after probably the 6-minute mark of the first quarter, and they'll see how it goes. But it'll be an interesting dynamic because I wonder how much of it matters if Randall plays or if he doesn't play. Because we know how he can get to his different spots. I know how he gets, the baseline stuff and all of that. I wonder if they force him in those different looks in the middle of the floor. I guess I'll ask you, what do you feel like his level is against that zone? Like if you were to kind of get a level on it.
So for Randall, it would depend on if he can knock down his three, right? He's a 34% shooter, high volume. He's averaging about 8 attempts this season. And that's usually what he does when he gets into the game. He sees if he can knock the 3 ball down, and he's been pretty solid he's been pretty solid for the high volume he's been, but it's up and down on some games. All right. Some days it's like really good from 3. Other days it's a little tough, but it's also based on it's based on the volume that he takes too. Like he's not the most lethal knockdown shooter from 3, right? Like he's not going to be like a Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson's prime, like, shooting close, if not 40% from 3 on high volume. Right. But with the 8 attempts, you still have to honor because he's still around hovering close to league average. So if he's rolling, he's that type of guy that if he's putting up 8 threes, he could hit 6 of those 8. So you still have to honor it. The question is, will he be able to do it that game? And that's kind of what we miss from Randall because he has been the leading 3-point shooter of this team. Brunson's shooting well on the season, shot 40% as well from 3. But if you don't have Randall, you're relying on Brunson, and you're not going to get solid 3-point shooting from RJ. Grimes has been a little bit up and down. Quickly's our next best 3-point shooter, and Quickly has just not played well for most of the playoffs so far, and he didn't play well against Miami whatsoever. He had some moments, but for the most part, he was just out of it. And if you're going to rely on Obi and Brunson to be your best 3-point shooters, it's going to be a tough time for New York. So really, like, having Randall back, he will draw the double team, but he can also help break the zone if he's shooting the 3 ball well. Other than that, if he's not, I just expect him to try to get to his spot in the post, 15 feet out, and try to knock down some jumpers right there and try to bust it that way as well.
Yeah, it's a good point. And we keep coming back to 3-point shooting. It just feels like everything just is a full circle effect right back to it. So that part will be interesting. Like, and the other reason is when you don't have Jimmy to guard Brunson, like I think Caleb did a pretty good job on him. Like that's kind of their next guy up to guard him. But that's a big loss in terms of kind of trying to cut off a head of a snake on the other team, and you lose that guy as well. Not only the offensive threat, but the defensive threat. And then you get Randall back into the fold, and then I guess matchups look like Bam on Randall, and Caleb probably slides in the starting lineup. So it's like they're just battling so many things in terms of this game is going to look completely different than game one. Like no trends are probably going to look the same on either team. Like both shot profiles, both defensive styles, everything's going to look different. So that part's going to be interesting. And I know we were talking about it before, but the no Jimmy aspect of things, that's more on the plate for Bam. And we're going to see how that looks because Bam has been kind of battling through an injury and he's kind of been out of his sorts a little bit. Like that Milwaukee matchup just forced him into the same shot over and over. And it was like, well, New York plays similar because they play that drop and close off the rim, but he can at least get different spots because New York's not as sticking to it as Milwaukee is. Milwaukee is just, they are what they are. Like they don't get out of it one bit. Like they are stubborn. They don't make the adjustment out of it. So maybe Bam can get different shots. We'll see how that looks like if there is no Jimmy. But it seems like Miami's ideology is just we are gonna like that first quarter for Miami in game one. They got up 17 threes, I think. Like
Mm-hmm.
that'll probably be even more, even more in game two. Like their style is gonna be, we're just gonna put up a bunch of threes without Jimmy. That's always been their style. If they drop, they drop. If they don't, well, it's gonna be trouble because they don't really have another rim pressure guy like Jimmy. Like you go down the roster, it's like Bam, maybe Kyle on certain nights, but it's not really. And it's just like a long line of guys that you are not going to put a ton of pressure on the rim on ball. So they're just going to get a bunch of threes up. And then once again, like I just said, we come right back to the threes.
It is once again coming right back to the three, and that's interesting for a Knicks defensive standpoint, right? If that's what they're going to do, and they're not going to attack the paint, that's what the Knicks are known for, right? They're protecting the paint. Mm-hmm. Actually, defending the three is kind of where they've been up and down throughout the entire regular season. Some nights it's like, oh, everything's clicking. Other nights it's not. And the thing is, when you watch the Knicks defend the three, it's not that it's been different. Tibbs is now like adjusted, as you talked about for Milwaukee, right? They're not so rigid with the drop coverage where you're just packing the paint. Sometimes you'll see the blitz, sometimes you'll see the hedge, or not the hedge, I should say. You'll see the blitz, sometimes you'll see both guys playing high, right? You're playing high above the screen just to wall off. That's been the difference maker for Tibbs this playoff series, because we haven't seen really a lot of that during the regular season. For the most part, he just sticks to drop coverage. But the thing is for the Knicks is that because they're protecting the paint, everyone's got to rush out and close out on three, and it's got to be a hard closeout, right? That's very difficult to do. Very difficult to do on a basketball court. So, and especially the way people shoot the three nowadays. So I'm interested to see how Tibbs adjusted that. If Miami's going to stick to a heavy 3-point shooting affair, if there's no Jimmy Butler, because at that point, how much do you need to play drop, right? Because if it's only going to be Bam, like you don't need to protect the paint that much. If you're going to try to dare just Kyle Lowry, like I don't really see Martin doing attacking the lane like that. I don't see Vincent attacking the lane like that. So, and I know Duncan Robinson is not driving down the lane like that. I know that for a fact.
No, so I would expect them to blitz. Like I would, like that feels like you mentioned the blitzing part of it. That would kind of be, they did it a little bit on Gabe in that game, even game one. Like they threw a lot of blitzes at him, which is something Tyler has seen time and time again. And that's kind of been a base of their offense now, because every time he goes off a screen, it's a blitz. I was interested to see them throwing that at Gabe and Kyle, specifically when Jimmy's playing. Now, when Jimmy's not playing in a game two scenario possibility, I would expect that a ton. And I think that's where things could get a little weird for Miami. Like, yeah, they can get a bunch of threes up, but they're going to need Bam to kind of pitch a perfect game, it feels like almost. And it's not even as a scorer, but if they're blitzing and they're hitting him in the pocket and now he's running 4-on-3s backside, like they're going to need him to make Jimmy like decisions consistently. And they're going to need him to not, because he's been a little turnover prone with the hands lately. Like kind of, you even saw it in that game one. Like he goes low with the ball, gets it stripped sometimes. Like they need him to pitch a perfect game as a hub. So it'll be, I think it'll be a fun adjustment game, because it feels like two teams that are just going to be kind of trying things out. It feels like on the fly.
And once again, we are talking to Brady Hawk. He is the lead Miami Heat writer for 5 Reasons Sports. Once again, Knicks Nation, if you cannot go to MSG to catch this game, you can go to the 40-40 Club. Jay-Z's 40-40 Club, hosted by KFTV. Make sure to go to KFTVplayoffs.com to go get your tickets. All right. And salute to all the channel members. Salute to Knicks Nation, everyone in the chat right now. Appreciate all you tuning in live. We got over 200 people in the chat right now. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. All right, Brady. Going to get you out of here real quick. I got a few more questions for you. I know you mentioned the 3-point shooting. That will be the change. Let me ask you this. If, let's just say the improbable does happen, right? Which is you don't have any Jimmy Butler, no Julius Randle, no Jalen Brunson.
Oh, God.
Let's say this is the game that we have for game 2. And you're already talking about this is going to be an interesting game of just feeling out and adjustments all over the place. What would you expect Miami to do defensively to guard that type of team?
Man, that's interesting. I think, like I said, I really do expect a ton of zone. Like that is kind of the main thing there. In terms of if there is no Brunson or Randall defensively for Miami, I think they switch everything. In terms of, I think Love will probably stay on Mitchell Robinson, and they'll just have Bam kind of switch all over the place, because they kind of anchor Bam down, and when there's that Brunson type player, when there's that kind of on ball type player. But if that's not the case, they probably would move everybody around. So it's like I said, it's probably a totally different game plan. And I'd expect the same for, like you said before, I'd expect the same for the Knicks defensively. Like if there's no Jimmy, they're probably not protecting the paint as much. They're probably playing higher up to the screen. They're probably sending more blitzes. So it feels like a totally different game plan. But man, would that be would that be something if we walk into tomorrow with no Brunson, Randall, or Jimmy? Like that feels like a definitely an improbable situation. But I definitely would think Brunson at least plays. He feels like the most likely of the three, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think he plays. It's just, when you see injury reports and just the way the playoffs have gone so far, as you noted out earlier, right? We saw it's just they did that for Quentin Grimes, where he's questionable to play and he doesn't play. It's just stuff like that where there's some gamesmanship, and these are two seasoned coaches. We got Eric Spoelstra on one side, Tom Thibodeau. They faced each other in Eastern Conference finals before. They're very familiar with each other's strategy. So I expect there to be some gamesmanship. Just be like, oh, well, we have no idea. We won't know how Jimmy's feeling until tomorrow. Tibbs is like, oh, well, Brunson. Well, let me throw Jalen out there. Let's see how you figure this out now. I feel like that's what we're getting right now from both of these coaches. But we'll see tomorrow, man. It'll be interesting to see who suits up and how everything unfolds. But another question for you. Well, I'll say the last question for you. This is the last question for you, and then we'll get you out of here. Who's your X factor going into tomorrow's game for the Miami Heat? Because you got, you got Kyle Lowry, you got Gabe Vincent. I feel like you got Greedy over there with two X factors. So who's your X factor for tomorrow?
I feel like Bam would be the easy answer, but if like I was doing a focus conversation, I would probably lean Bam because they need him in that way. But I'll go in a different direction. I think it's probably Duncan Robinson. I think he could be an X factor because in a scenario where you don't have Jimmy, you don't have the same rim pressure guys. Like I said, you're going to need to get a bunch of shots up from deep. Duncan's been the one guy to kind of replicate some of the things Tyler did. And what I mean by that is I don't think there's a better person on the team that gets Bam the ball than Duncan Robinson. Like he knows how to do it. He's really good in the pocket passes. He just has a really good connection with them back from when they first in 2020, when it was like handoff after handoff after handoff. And that was kind of their whole offense and the reason they got to that point in that 2020 year. But if Duncan could get going from deep in terms of the 3-point shooting, it changes the offensive outlook for Miami. So like if there was an X factor, that's it. But the question is, if like a Brunson, let's say Brunson plays, he's on the other end, Brunson is going to attack Duncan constantly. Like that's the issue. Like so when one of Miami's shooters like that gets going, it's a balance because it's like, yeah, you keep them on the floor to close, but then they're being attacked constantly on the other end because Miami is known for just giving up easy switches on the perimeter. So it's then now there's over reliance on sending a double. Now it's a kick out for an open shot. So it's like, it's a cycle, but I do think Duncan could change kind of the feel to this game too.
Okay. You're going to go with Duncan Robinson. I see some of you in the chat saying DW Shorts. I see RJ Barrett being the X factor. He can't be an X factor, man, if he's been consistent for the last 3 games. All right, RJ's been doing well the last 3 games. You can talk about the last 4th quarter was a struggle. That's another story. But I'm outside of RJ Barrett, I'm gonna go with Emmanuel quickly. He's been struggling, and if there's one thing I've seen through the playoffs with him so far, he showed up for game 3, showed up for game 5. I expect him to like shake off the nerves and come out and play a decent game. I expect him to play a decent game. I know defensively he'll be fine, but the offensive side, he has been struggling. I need to see him have a good game because this is not the Emmanuel Quickley who is in consideration for 6th man of the year so far. He's been very inconsistent. He's been one of the more consistent players throughout the regular season, and he needs to step up, finally find his shooting touch, attack the lane when he sees an opening, facilitate. I'm going to go with Emmanuel Quickley being the X factor to tomorrow, just because you also need that secondary playmaker. Outside of if it's only Brunson, Miami will be able to double, triple, blitz him, try to force someone else to be a playmaker. That's why you have Quickley out there in those closing minutes, to be that secondary facilitator. So I need to see Quickley step up for tomorrow. All right, Brady, I'm good. This is the bonus question because I see some people in the chat asking this. They want to know, who do you have winning tomorrow, and what's the score?
Man, I feel like I'd have to hold it down for the Miami side of things.
Okay.
But I feel reluctant. Like I do. Like I feel like they got their one. It would be an absolute miracle if they got both in the Garden to start out this series, especially because of the fact I think they don't have Jimmy. Uh, I'll be honest. I think this is a close game. I think Jimmy doesn't play. I think it's a close game, and the Knicks kind of squeak one out in the end, and the Knicks probably end up winning the clutch game. But Miami's the one thing I will say is like nobody's going to give Miami a chance in this game, and I probably wouldn't either. And I think most Heat fans probably wouldn't either. But the weird thing is this team is oddly confident right now in a scary way where, and I mean that with when you're playing with house money in a game 2 and you're just kind of going out there playing freely when your best player isn't out there and you're kind of just going to get shots up. Sometimes the game gets weird. Like it just does. Like there's like those trap game elements to it. But I do think kind of when a team has the best player on the floor, I think eventually they'll probably close it out late.
Okay, I'm gonna go with the Knicks, man. I feel like the series got to be evened out. Knicks are back against the wall at this point. They're also a team that's with house money. I mean, most pundits didn't even think that they'd be in this position in the second round. So for right now, it's a successful season. Obviously, I want to see them go further than this, but I think they're going to win tomorrow. I expect the battle. If Jimmy doesn't play though, it's hard. It's hard for me to see where all that offense comes from though.
Yeah.
If Jimmy doesn't play, it's hard for me to see where all that offense. I would expect like an 8-point win for the Knicks. So I'm gonna go like, and these have been low scoring games. These have been very low scoring games. But I'll go with like 105 just because the Knicks 3-point shooting hasn't been there. I'm gonna go 105 like 98, something along those lines. That's how I'm feeling for tomorrow.
Okay.
But Brady, thank you for coming on and previewing this game with me. Please let our listeners know where they can find you. If you got any work coming up that we should be on the lookout for and all that.
Twitter's at BradyHawk305. And we have the 5 on the Floor podcast that just covers all Miami Heat stuff. So I'm sure this Knicks TV is going to love that podcast. Yeah. I'm sure all of Knicks Nation really wants to tune in to a Miami Heat podcast. I'm sure. You never know, man. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot of listeners that are just big NBA fans and they love to keep up to date with all the teams around the league. So I would not be surprised whatsoever. But Brady, appreciate you coming on once again. And that is Brady Hawk, who's the lead Miami Heat writer for 5 Reasons Sports. And once again, Knicks Nation, salute to all of you for tuning in. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. And remember, if you can't go to MSG tomorrow to go catch the game live, and if you don't want to stay at home and you want to go hang out with the rest of Knicks Nation, make sure to go to KFTVplayoffs.com to go get your tickets to Jay-Z's 40/40 Club, okay? Make sure to get there an hour before the doors open. So if the game starts at 7:30, make sure to get there at 6:30. That way you can go get your drinks, get settled in, chat up with some people, come on, guys. You got to go have fun, especially watching these games. And make sure to go support the orange and blue as they take on the Miami Heat once again. Also, make sure to check out KnicksFanTV.com where you can find Remy's recaps after every single game. He breaks down every single player and tells you how they performed throughout the entire game. Appreciate you, Knicks Nation. Thank you all for tuning in once again. Salute to all the channel members. Salute to all the mods. We'll catch you tomorrow. Post-game, play-by-play, pre-game, all that good stuff. We out of here.